some of the themes that I've been picking up on is how things have changed. You know, there were lots of references in the presentations to how tax planning needs to be less aggressive. You know, it sounds like the tone has changed, the approach has changed. What's your observation on that?
I think from our own point of view, we kind of took everything with a big health warning and said, well, okay, that sounds really interesting, but there's nothing for nothing in life. And ultimately, there's a good chance you're going to get bitten. So if you want to go for the aggressive tax planning regime and take those chances, then be it on your own head and put the money to one side and be prepared to pay it later on, was my view. So we settled for something, you know, far less aggressive and perhaps more conservative, but something that we could bank and be fairly comfortable with. I was interested in Eric's comment about building value within businesses, and I just wondered what risk you saw in doing that in terms of the capital gains rate going up over the next 4 or 5 years, because it's all well and good saying, well, actually I'm going to exit in 3 to 5 years time and therefore I'm going to bank my money and take it out on a pound for pound basis and hopefully pay my 10%, 18%, 28%, whatever the number's going to be. But actually, you know, there's a common school of thought that says CGT rate's going to go up over the next 3 to 5 years, and you could leave all that money in there at risk, and then in 3 to 5 years' time, be no better off, potentially could even be worse off.
One of the reasons behind the CGT increase, because it actually isn't going to generate that much more revenue, it isn't going to help against the deficit. One of the big reasons was that the government does not like people engineering transactions into the capital gains tax regime to avoid income tax. Well, with a 50% top rate of income tax and a 28% rate of capital gains tax, advisors are still doing that. 28% isn't enough to disincentivise people. The Conservative Party will alienate a lot of its supporters if it does that. So there's a political argument for not doing it. But certainly those in HMRC would like to see that happen.
Contrary to popular opinion, most banks still do need to lend money and are lending money. We have to lend money because that's our business, that's what we do. We're a bank at the end of the day. But it certainly is true for the industry as a whole. We are more careful about who we lend to, and we will charge a different price for it than we might have charged a year or two ago.
Eric, I was intrigued with the model that you presented of using a security linked to CGT to help employees and maybe non-share owning directors get more out of a business. Is that model or something similar really taking off now? I mean, to me that seems like that may be something that the government again may take a dim view of over time.
I think the point of that is it is tied to the performance of the business. There are a number of government-approved share schemes, enterprise management incentives, for instance, and there is tax legislation and statute book that encourages companies to issue shares to individuals to participate in the performance of the business. Now, entrepreneurial privately owned companies won't always want to issue shares because it will dilute the shareholding of the family, say, and some other form of security as an alternative to a share really provides the same kind of long-term incentive. If the company does well, the value of your security will go up. If it does badly, it won't go up and it might even go down. And it seems to me that it's quite difficult for the revenue to argue that that isn't a security which is subject to capital gains tax. There's no guarantees, as there might be with remuneration or salary and so on. They did announce in the last budget, the last Labour budget, that they were going to look at those sorts of schemes, and there are a variety of them out there, some of which I would class as aggressive, some of which I wouldn't. They announced they were going to look at those sorts of schemes, but the HMRC have announced more recently, indeed in the last month, that consultation isn't going to happen, and they aren't going to do it. And that suggests to me that they're prepared to live with those schemes, because when all's said and done, they're getting 28% capital gains tax, they're not getting zero tax, and it is a form of incentive.
Particularly from in my role there where I invest in businesses and take typically a non-exec type role, then any way that I can use to incentivise management to deliver an end outcome that's to the good of all is a tool worth adopting, I think.